So New York could soon have its first openly socialist mayor, Zohran Mamdani. Depending on who you ask, that's either a nightmare scenario or just a new direction. But for people who actually have lived under real socialism, the language sounds awfully familiar. My next guest, Peter Lamage, knows that world firsthand. He fled communist Albania after his father was executed for refusing to cooperate with the regime. And when he arrived in America, he started over, became an attorney, built a successful law practice, and has since become one of the country's most outspoken defenders of liberty, capitalism, and constitutional government. Peter's an immigration attorney, political analyst, and former Republican candidate for governor of Connecticut. He's also the author of My Father's Prayers, A Refugee's Continuing Search for Freedom, a memoir about escaping tyranny and rebuilding a life in the United States. And he says what Zohran Mamdani is proposing, talk of seizing the means of production and state-directed economics, it's the same ideology that wrecked Eastern Europe and bankrupted Venezuela. And he's warning that Americans, especially immigrants who came here for freedom, should recognize those signs before it's too late. Peter, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, Zohran Mamdani, probably going to be the next mayor. Freaking you out a bit. A lot of people, actually. A lot of people are pretty upset about his potential takeover of the city. Give us why you think he's so dangerous.
Look, I was born and raised in a communist country, and I know I've seen that movie before, and I don't like the ending of it. Everything that I left behind in Eastern Europe 36 years ago is coming to the United States. We are promoting a failed, evil ideology, an ideology that has caused so much harm and dismay and disarray all over the world, including Albania, where I come from, including certain parts of Eastern Europe, no question about it, Russia, China, Venezuela, you name it. This is an ideology that has been tried before and it doesn't work. The reason why it doesn't work is that the government will have full command and control over the population. Now, until I came to the United States, my brothers and I, my siblings and I, we were enslaved by our own government. We were told what to do. We were told what to think. We were told what schools to attend, what jobs to perform. Pretty much, we were completely under the directives of the party that Zohran Mamdani is promoting in the United States called the Socialist Party. They have a cuter name for it, but socialists eventually wind up being communists, and we don't want that. This is not American. It's not compatible with our values, and that's why it concerns me, because when you hear a guy who wants to run New York City and wants to have control over the grocery stores and the rentals, and then, pretty much he's telling us that the government is the solution to the challenges that our city is failing. But the most disturbing thing is that you see American-born citizens supporting him, and 63% of the voters in New York City who were not born in the United States, who came to the United States one way or another, are supporting him. This is what we have been promoting in the United States, especially in major cities like New York City, that it's not at all American. It should be defeated.
Tell us about, in Albania, what caused people to go in that socialist direction?
It's not
Why
that.
did the people support it?
Look, the way I look at socialism is that you can vote it in, but then you need a bloody revolution to dismantle it. And that's what happened in Eastern Europe. Eventually, the promises that the socialists and the communists made to the population, they were appealing at the beginning. And then eventually, those promises couldn't be kept because you run out of other people's money. You start dispossessing the rich and try forcefully redistribute properly, giving to the people who never worked for it. And we see the same thing being promoted in New York right now, in certain parts of the United States. But when people realized that they had made a mistake by electing a socialist or a communist to lead them, it was too late. Because the first thing that the socialists and the communists would do is that they would get to the point that they want to disarm the population so they cannot defend themselves. That's what they did in Albania, where I come from. Then they started imprisoning, executing, or sending people to concentration camps if you disagreed with them. They reopened or opened re-education camps where people would be sent into a re-education camp. My family was there, and we witnessed this. I've seen family members being forcefully to accept an ideology that they disagreed with it. I had family members executed by these government agents who were authorized by the Communist Party or the Socialist Party to take such actions. Now, when my family was picked up to be taken to a concentration camp, the only people who had guns were government agents. They tortured my father to death. because he had refused to notify the government that his sons wanted to search for freedom and opportunity and leave Albania. Communist countries have borders not to allow people to flee. They don't have borders not to allow people to come into those countries. It's interesting that you don't see people from the Western world flee into communist countries, but you see people from communist countries or socialist countries fleeing or leaving or going to the Western countries, because we provide opportunity, we provide freedom, we provide things that socialism and communism do not stand for.
You don't want to miss this. Save up to 40% on everything during the fall sale at CB Distillery. If you're tired of tossing and turning at night, feeling stressed or dealing with aches and pains, you need to hear about CBD from CB Distillery. People everywhere are turning to CBD because it works. Listen to this. Over 90% of customers say they sleep better with CBD. That's huge. And CB Distillery has natural solutions for just about everything. Better sleep, mood, focus, pain relief after workouts, even CBD for pets. And it's all made with clean, high-quality ingredients. I personally love their sleep gummies. So does my family. For many of us, it's the only thing that actually works. So look, if you've been waiting for the perfect time to try CBD, this is it. Stock up and save up to 40% on everything. Just head over to cbdistillery.com and use my promo code RUMBLE. That's cbdistillery.com, code RUMBLE, cbdistillery.com. Specific product availability depends on individual state regulations. But why did the people of Albania get to that point where they voted it in? I mean, I think that's important to understand because, just telling the people of New York or any major city in America, look, this is bad, you don't want this. That's not enough, right? Because they clearly have reasons for why they're wanting this system. And obviously the people of Albania also had their reasons. So and then those have to be addressed rather than just saying to people, oh, shut up, move on, like it's not, this is going to fail, this is terrible, this is awful. We have to give them a solution and we have to figure out what that solution is. And right now, what the people of New York are saying is the current solutions that have been in place for decades and decades, and even a couple of hundred years, have failed them.
The American system that we have hasn't failed anybody. If we look at the examples of failure and you point out to these communist countries, they are the failures. That is the system that has failed. And that is the system that the media, unfortunately, the left media and the leftists in the United States are misleading the voters when they talk about socialism. They're not telling them the truth. The educational system has let us down, especially the public educational system, by failing to educate our kids and comparing the two systems that we have over here. One of them that is about command and control over the population, and the other one that provides freedom to the population. There is going to be there is this confrontation happening in the United States between these two irreconcilable entities. One of them is statism and the other one is capitalism. Statism is nothing else but socialism. It's communism. And statism is being promoted in the United States, especially New York City and other cities where these socialist Democrats are telling the voters that we are the solution to your problems. When was the last time that a government employee was a solution to any one of our problems? When was the last time that someone who promotes socialism or lived in socialism have seen prosperity? The left in the United States wants to create a permanent underclass and always point out that you are the victim, that you are the oppressed, and you got the oppressor or the oppressor here, and is always the capitalist, the rich guy who is oppressing you. None of these people who have not succeeded in the United States, mostly young people, they haven't seen the difference between these two systems with their own eyes. It is what's being sold to them. It's a bill of goods that is being sold to them. But if they were to talk to people like you and me and others who came from communist countries, we'll tell them a different story with the facts, without making that up. We point out to these things that when government started supplying or providing bread to us, the simplest things. You had to stand in line to get that piece of bread. And if the store ran out of bread, you were not allowed to complain. You were supposed to go home. Otherwise, if you complained that there was no bread to buy in the store that was run by the government, you could have been arrested for that. I've seen people being arrested for that. Others have seen people being arrested. And this is the problem that I think that we have failed to provide this comparison between these two systems.
Well, so there's a lot I agree with you on in that. I definitely am not a fan of communism. I don't think I definitely, my family also fled Vietnam and, well, some of my family, not all of my family got out. And my family that was left behind, the communists came and, like, for example, my aunt was living in our family home and the communists came and took the family house and made her move into the garage. I mean, that's where she had to live for years, and years and years. And my grandfather was also taken and put into a re-education camp. And it was my family struggled. It was very, very difficult. And so I've seen firsthand the difficulties that authoritarian communism can create for a family and for an individual, and how it is a total loss of freedom. And there's a lot that's, I think, really awful about it. So I'm with you on that. Communism is not, I think, typically an answer. However, I will say that, China is doing pretty damn well. And I think it's really tough to argue. I think when people in New York, for example, see how China was able to rapidly change their economy from a lot of destitution and poverty to now being as prosperous as they are. I know a lot of Americans want to turn a blind eye and not believe it, but China has outperformed us. And their students are smarter than ours. I mean, that's just categorically true at this point. I mean, they are outperforming us in engineering, in math, in innovation, in the prosperity that the Chinese are under right now. I mean, their cities are incredible. They're making American cities look like third world countries. And I think Americans see that, right? I mean, you've got New Yorkers and they're like, we're struggling, we've got all these problems. And then you look at, they go on to TikTok and they see the way the Chinese are really living versus what all these other people on Fox News or anybody wants to tell them all this stuff about China. It's not true. And then they see the truth and they watch YouTube videos and they see the truth about China and they say, wait a minute, they've got it figured out. Now, I don't like China's government because they are extremely authoritarian. I think we saw that during COVID. They locked people up. They went around. They rounded them up. I mean, there's really even my family in Vietnam. I have some of them have married Chinese and they go to China all the time. And they'll even say they're freer in Vietnam than they are in China. And they go back and forth between the two countries. And they're both communist countries. So, China definitely has had to, in order to accomplish what they have, they've had to they've had to really, like, throw the hammer down on people and ideas and whatnot. But, people see that it works and they think, well, that's what I don't care about voicing my opinion about politics. I don't care about politics anyway, which is the vast majority of Americans. And then they say, I just want, to live in a nice place and not be surrounded by homeless people. And I want to be able to afford childcare and I want to be able to afford an education for my kids. And I want to be able to afford these things. And I don't really care about voicing my opinion. And so what does it, because that's most people are apolitical. Most people don't vote. Most people don't care. So they see that and they think, what's the big deal? Like, why not? I think it's better. Or they see Denmark, they see Sweden, they see Norway, and they say, that model, which I think is what Zohran Mamdani is actually, I don't think he's really bringing in communism. I think he's bringing in more of that social democrat. And they see how these are the happiest countries on earth. They have the lowest levels of corruption. The people are provided for. You still can innovate. You still can make a lot of money. You still can be the owner of IKEA and be from Sweden and make $1 billion. But the wealth disparity is not as great as it is here in the United States. So I think people see these models, and whether it be the Swedish model or whether it be the Chinese model, I think they see that life for the average person who is not political, doesn't care about their voicing opinions, life is better. How do you combat that? How do you explain to a person, yeah, but you still don't want that? You're better off, like, wallowing in the street or not having access to education or healthcare? I mean, I don't know how you sell that to somebody.
Look, I think that is an extreme position. I'll be frank with you, because anyone who has to have access to education in the United States can have access to education in the United States. If I could do it when I didn't speak word of English and I was allowed to take English as a second language classes, learn some English, go to college, go to law school, do all these things, and my family members did it. 36 years later, we have doctors in my family who are educated here. We have lawyers, we have engineers. I mean, you can achieve things in the United States. Capitalism is not preventing anyone from pursuing that dream.
Right.
It is that people have chosen or made the wrong choices. Now, when it comes to the Chinese prospering so quickly, I'm going to disagree with you on that because they didn't prosper until they started embracing capitalism. You know that they were extremely poor. They started embracing capitalism, which to your point, then if we embrace capitalism cheerfully and fearlessly, it works for everybody. If it's working in China in the last 15 years, imagine the incredible power of capitalism if we unleash it fearlessly in the United States that it can have. Now, when you live in a free country, of course you're going to have homeless. Of course you're going to have poor people. The government is not in a position of determining the outcome of success. You provide the environment for equal opportunity. You don't provide the environment for equal result because equal result is going to lead to equal misery, nothing else. Not everybody was born or is given the talent to perform or to do what you're doing or what I do. But there are so many options in a free society that no one has to pursue anything that is not suitable to pursue. In a socialist communist government, pretty much you are told what to pursue. China is prospering to a certain extent, but when I go to immigration court, and I do that almost every day, I don't see any immigration court that I've visited so far that we don't have Chinese residents coming from China applying for some sort of relief in the United States. And when you talk to them, they will tell you a different story. People who have seen that movie like we did will tell you a different story. It's not what the Chinese government paints for the media and the international community so that they look good on a piece of paper or on TV. Reality is different. If you were to allow the Chinese population right now, give them the freedom to leave China, you would see millions and millions of them leaving that country. But you have the borders open for Americans to leave anytime they want, and I don't see them fleeing to these countries. So the counter argument is that, yes, China may be doing well, but China is still authoritarian and is embracing capitalism. And the reason why it's doing well is because of capitalism, investments. The other thing is this: the foreign policy that we have had, especially since NAFTA with Bill Clinton, we have been giving to Chinese a break, pretty much the government. They produce everything for the entire world because we consider them to be that emerging nation that needed certain, leeway to prosper. Now, Donald Trump is doing the opposite. He's forcing the Chinese to come to the table, and you're going to see the economy of China actually falling behind, very quickly behind the United States again. So the United States is approximately not even 5% of the U.S. population, the world's population. Yet I think we have about 33% of the world's GDP. So capitalism has not failed us yet. It's going to fail us if we do not properly embrace it and implement it. And this is the fear that we have if we allow socialist Democrats to take over certain major towns and cities such as New York or Los Angeles or Chicago, because then they are going to have to be bailed out by the federal government. And once you get to that point, the federal government is you and I and others who pay taxes over here, and we're going to have to bail out their failed liberal policies. And I think we have to avoid that. We shouldn't allow that to be implemented in the United States.
What do you say about the Swedish or like Danish models of, they're still capitalist. And like I said, I don't think Zoran Mamdani is actually changing capitalism. I think he has social democratic ideas that are very, very in line with Sweden or Denmark or any of the Scandinavian nations. And they're still capitalist. I mean, there's no, they're capitalist. But they're happy and so what do you think about that economic model? Why does that not work for you?
Well, you and I agree to disagree because Zohran Mamdani would implement socialism and communism if he could. The strength of the United States is the Constitution, is the foundation of this country. But for those founding documents, he would do that if he could. And why do I believe that? He says it. Listen to his interviews. He talks about socialism more than someone who grew up in a socialist country and endured socialism. So he would do it. The beauty of the United States is that if he wins and becomes the mayor of New York City, if a Republican governor wins next year, that governor can take over the city. And the federal government can defund certain projects and that he wants to implement in New York City. So we're going to have these checks and balances, and thank God we have those. But happiness, certain people find happiness in a certain small European countries. Of course they do. I'm not saying that the entire world is miserable, but you cannot deny the fact that those countries have a different makeup when it comes to their population, to their culture, to their border countries that surround them. It's a different approach to their lifestyle. But when you look at the GDP or the standard of living of these countries and the United States, is a major, major difference. When you look at the standard of living, for example, the median income in Italy, it's about 34,000, 35,000 euros a year. In the United States, we are almost 70,000 a year. So you compare, they find happiness with little. Americans, for whatever reasons, I think is the gene that we pursue greater things in life than certain other European people would pursue. So it's nothing wrong with them finding happiness the way they are, but it's nothing wrong with us pursuing our happiness as it's enumerated in the Declaration of Independence, that we have our God-given right. We are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, such as life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So we want to pursue it differently. And to pursue that happiness, we need the founding principles of this country to remain strong, because they have allowed it so far for us to pursue that dream.
One part of the American dream is the fact that we are a federation of states, and each state should be able to govern itself, each municipality to govern itself, the ability for people to govern themselves. That's kind of what makes America so great and so free. And one thing also, that I learned to really appreciate during COVID was the fact that so many states had different approaches. And there was like a state for everybody, kind of a thing. Like depending on how you felt about COVID and what you wanted done, there was like a state for you. Go live there, right? And a lot of people did just that. A lot of people moved out of the blue states to the red states, and the people that loved the blue states stayed in the blue states, and they liked the way it was done. And obviously there was a vast difference in the approach between like Florida and California, for example. So what if the people of New York want to live like in a Scandinavian style model? Like, so what if they do? Just don't, I guess if you don't like it, just don't live there, right? I mean, that's rather
That is,
than, you know what I mean? Like that's part of the freedom of the country, I
of
think.
course, of course, that's a solution. If he wins and becomes the mayor of New York City, we have the freedom to leave if we choose to leave. But I think that New Yorkers are going to choose to fight. And 4 years from now, we're going to hold another election and hopefully remove him from there if he wins this time. So, but the beauty, as you said, of the United States is that we have this federation of states, but these states still have to abide by the supremacy clause of the United States Constitution, because there is a reason that we have a U.S. Constitution in addition to these 50 constitutions that each state has. But all of these states, these constitutions, they have established a republican form of government. I don't see any one of these constitutions talking about socialism. I don't see the federal constitution talking about socialism. They talk about a republican form of government. And if we can maintain that, it's going to serve us well, as it has served for the past 250 years. And allowing this ideology called socialism to spread, I think that Americans will understand that New York, if this guy becomes a mayor, is going to be a failure within a couple of years. And that is going to be used as a model during the other campaigns, whether it's for Congress, Senate, or presidency in the future, that this is what socialism can do to a city, to a nation. Look at all failed liberal cities in the United States. All of them are center left. Whether it's Chicago, Detroit, New York, Los Angeles, all of them are center left. None of them are functioning properly. Why do the red states do better? Why do the red cities do better? Why do the red towns do better? Because there is a better understanding of what it means to live or to pursue that form of a life where capitalism is the foundation of it. And they want to replace that with the government instead of capitalism, as if the government is going to provide for the people instead of people providing for themselves. I believe that people should be able to provide for themselves, and the government should have these safety nets that, if necessary, yes, we should provide health care to people who cannot afford it. Yes, we should provide pro bono legal work to people who cannot afford it. We have been doing that for hundreds of years, and we will continue to do that. But when the government gets involved and wants to provide those services to the population, then pretty much you kill the incentive of people to get out there and provide and produce for themselves.
Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.